I've been sitting with something that I didn't catch right away, and I don't think it's obvious when it's actually happening. It didn't show up as a problem, and that's probably part of what made it really easy to miss. Everything was moving, work was getting done at the right time. From the outside, there wasn't anything that would make you stop and question it. In fact, if anything, it looked like things were working the way that they were supposed to. It came out of a conversation around some bids that had already been submitted and won. The projects were already in motion, and nothing about them looked off, especially not in a way that needed to be addressed immediately. There wasn't pressure in the conversation, it wasn't reactive, it was just looking at what had already happened. And still, something underneath it didn't quite feel the same. Now, this wasn't in a dramatic way. It wasn't like something was broken or someone had pushed back really aggressively. It was much quieter than that. The kind of shift that you don't notice until you're already deep inside of it. And then you realized it's been there longer than you thought. Now, the decisions themselves weren't the issue. They had been accepted and the work had started. Everything should have happened after the decision like that did happen. If you were checking the boxes, it would have all come back clean. But they didn't hold the way that they should have. That's the part that I kept coming back to. Not because it's something that I hear people talk about directly. It doesn't fit into the normal categories of what we think is wrong when something doesn't go the way that we expected. We have a language for bad decisions. We have a language for poor execution. We have a language for when people don't follow through. This wasn't any of that. The decision did what it was supposed to do at the moment that it was made. It just didn't carry. And once I saw it there, I started noticing it in other places that didn't seem connected at first. You can sit in a meeting, walk through something clearly, get an agreement from everyone at the table, and watch it move forward exactly the way you expect it to. There's no confusion in the room. No one's pushing back. It feels clean. Then you come back to it later, and something about it doesn't quite line up with what you thought was going to happen. It's not wrong enough to call it a failure, not broken in a way that demands immediate attention. It's just off. And no one can point to the moment where it shifted. No one can tell you where it went from what it was supposed to be to what it actually became. That's the part that's been sitting with me. Because if you try to fix that at the level of the decision, you actually miss it completely. You're going to go back and refine how you decide. You'll try to be clearer. You'll add more detail. You'll structure it because that way it's going to transfer better and more cleanly. And yet the same problem can still happen again. Because what's missing isn't the decision itself. It's in what happens after the decision. I've done this in my career way more than I realized. I would make something clear, I felt like it landed, and I watched people move on it. And then I assumed it was being carried the same way that I was holding it. But they weren't. They were following it. And that looks identical at the very beginning of the process. If you're watching from the outside, you can't tell the difference. The work starts, people take action, things move in the direction that was set from the decision. There's nothing in that early stage that tells you whether something is being carried or just followed. The difference doesn't show up until something changes, until the situation no longer fits exactly what was expected when the decision was made. That's when you start to see it. Because if someone is carrying it, they adjust with it. They stay connected to what it was meant to produce, not just what was said at the beginning. They're going to make decisions inside of it that keep it aligned, even when the conditions around it start to shift. If they're following it, they keep moving in the same direction, even when it stops fitting. It's not because they're doing something wrong. It's because that's all they have. They have what was said. They don't have what it was meant to do. And I think I've been assuming those were the same thing more often than I realize it. And I think a lot of leaders do that too. You see, I've assumed that if something was clear in the moment, it would stay clear once it left that moment. I've assumed that if people agreed to something, they were holding it the same way I was. I don't think that's true anymore because things change. I think a lot of what it gets agreed to doesn't actually get carried by anyone once it moves past the point where it was decided. It just gets moved forward. And as long as it keeps working well enough, no one has reason to ever question it. That's what makes it hard to see, because it doesn't break dramatically. It doesn't create a moment where you have to stop everything, get out, and fix something. It just so slowly separates from what it was supposed to be. And you feel it before you can really explain it. You start to notice that things don't quite land the way you expected. You start to feel a little less certain about decisions that you would have been confident in before. You find yourself going back to things more often, not because they're failing, but because something about it just not sitting right. And it's easy to turn that back on yourself. That's what we do, right? It's easy for us to think we need to decide better. We need to be sharper and more precise. We need to get closer to the right answer before anything moves. And sure, those are all great things. But I don't think that's where the core of the problem is. I think it's in whether what gets decided is actually being held by anyone once it leaves you. Because if it's not, then everything still depends on you in a way that just can't show up right away. It shows up later. It shows up in how often things come back. It shows up in how much you're still thinking for other people, even when they're the ones doing the work. It might show up in how hard it is to actually step out of something, even when you've built people and structure all around it. And the part that's been bothering me is how normal that looks. It's easy to miss it. It's easy to call that execution. It's easy to look at movement and assume something is being carried when it's not. Because once you see the difference, it's hard not to see it everywhere. It's hard not to notice when something is being followed instead of actually held. And it changes how you look at a lot of things that used to feel solid. Let me be clear, my friends, it's not because they were wrong. It's because they were never being carried in the way that you thought they were.